Hello and welcome back to Daring and Doing. I'm Will Hester and I'm joined by Ben Bowman. How are you, mate?
Very good, mate. Very, very good. Looking forward to Sunday. It's like, it feels massive this now, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Sunday.
it does.
Like
I'm
it,
shitting
obviously,
myself.
me too, mate. Me too. I'm going to the game as well. I've never been to Villa Park
Oh,
before.
yeah.
It's my first. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've managed to do quite a few away games this season, and it's been quality. But Villa, I've never done before, so I'm looking forward to it. I was saying like to someone earlier, Villa Tottenham feels like a proper Premier League game. Like I think it's Villa Everton is the most played fixture in first division history. But Villa Tottenham has that sort of same thing about it. And it's also like one of those things of like the colours of the kits and stuff. It just feels right, like feels proper.
Proper Barclays.
So I'm looking forward to it. Literally. And we'll probably wear our away kit for some stupid reason, like we have done in games where we really don't need to wear it.
Yeah, that's true.
To sort of just ruin that. But I'm looking forward to the game. Obviously, much better last week. It's big. Like obviously it's City Liverpool on Sunday, but this is equally like as important for the context of the season. Not quite as important as the title race, but yeah, it's massive, mate. Massive.
It's all on that one day, isn't it? Those two games.
Yeah, so we're 1:00 and then they're 3:45 or something. All the times have gone a bit skew with again with the kickoffs. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I need to find a pub to go and go and watch it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Just stay in it for the next one as well. It's class.
Yeah.
When it's so rare now that on Sky there's two good games on Super Sunday. Like it's always like there's a big game at 4:30, but before that it's Burnley against Sheffield United. And it's like fuck yeah. Like last week I think it was Burnley Bournemouth leading up to the Manchester derby, and it's like you just want a Sunday where you can sit in front of the sofa.
Yeah.
And this Sunday is perfect for that as well. It's a big weekend of sport, to be fair. It's AJ tonight as well, isn't it? AJ's fighting Francis Ngannou tonight.
Is he? I'm out of the loop when it comes to boxing, but I might.
Oh, really?
I might actually watch that because I watched Ngannou versus Fury.
So yeah.
I might watch that because I think that'd be a close game. From what I saw, literally that one boxing game I saw with Tyson Fury.
Yeah, so 1-0, I think probably.
Yeah.
Just cancel each other out. Just like hit him on the counter attack. And it's the. I mean, I don't really watch F1, but I feel like the F1's back this weekend as well. Am I making that up?
Mate, I haven't got a clue. I need to start.
Let's stick to the football. Let's stick to the
football.
Yeah,
let's stick.
I don't do F1. I just can't get into it.
No, I can't. People have been raving about it. I need to get into it. It's just I put so much time into football that I don't really have any time on anything else. I can't be bothered to sort of learn a new sport. I just want to learn more about football.
I'm the same. I watch football. It's football and cricket for me. Like I play cricket as well. And I watch a lot
of it. You got TikTok on cricket, haven't you? And darts.
I actually do, yeah. It's a little plug. Yeah, I've not done the darts stuff for ages, to be fair. Like, my board's still here. And I was actually playing a little bit before we started, just to it's one of those things where it's almost like a habit of just throwing every day.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy it, but I stopped making videos. I need to get back to it. I thought the hype was dying down. I thought I pulled out at the right time, but I think I've done the complete wrong thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, literally everybody's still making darts videos. I'm like, oh, fuck's sake. I should have carried on.
Get back onto it.
To be fair though, like it's one of those things with Spurs and like making videos and stuff, everything just got super busy again, and it was like there was a lot going on. I just didn't have the time for it. But very much looking forward to Sunday. Very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is the preview for Aston Villa versus Tottenham on Sunday. Before we get into it though, I want to talk about a photo that came out a couple of days ago of, I think, like all the Spurs players at a restaurant. Or it might not have been all the Spurs players, but a good handful of Spurs players just like dining out together, having a good time. Even Ollie Skip was there in the back,
I know,
just beaming. Like I don't even know.
You said that to me. I didn't even see him.
Yeah,
no, I didn't even see him.
You just saw him, like his little face, like just smiling. He was so happy to be like included. And it just looks like such a inclusive, connected squad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Wholesome, like really wholesome.
Really
wholesome. It's just like, imagine being a Spurs fan and just like, because I think it was in a pub. Like it might have been a restaurant, it looked like a pub from the background. Like imagine just going into a pub and just seeing all the Spurs lot there, just like having a laugh and just like, it's what you want to see. Like it reminds me of like Poch days where, do you remember there was that photo that went round of them at the fancy dress party?
Yeah.
Like the whole squad.
That Mrs. Doubtfire and stuff.
Yeah.
Dele Alli was Ali G and stuff like that. That was class.
That's quality. And also, there was another one from this season as well, where like it was earlier on in the season, and the squad went out for like a big meal, and there was loads of like funny videos and photos and stuff, and came out from it. And like, it feels like after quite a long time after Poch, we've got a very tight knit group and like a very like they all get on. And it's all the sort of like the players that were in that photo would be all the sort of players that you'd want to walk into that pub and see, I think, as well. Like Maddison, 100%. Like I think Brennan Johnson's probably low key like a bit of like a character. Like
Yeah, I
I
think
want to
so.
know
I
what
think
they.
he is.
I want to know what they'd all be drinking. Like I'm
Do you
trying to
reckon they
think of
were
like
actually drinking? They must have been on the water
maybe
or like the
probably.
ginger beer or something. Like,
Yeah, or like a Peroni Zero or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Other beers are available in case we ever get a sponsorship on it.
yeah.
Um,
Peroni, if you're looking for
they,
anything.
yeah, yeah. Ben also like because it was Ben Davis that posted it, wasn't it, on Instagram? And it was in like a bit
Yeah.
of a photo dump alongside some other stuff. But I love this team. I love them so much. Like I tweeted out, I was like, just imagine walking into that pub and just seeing them there. You just lose your shit.
Yeah, you actually would. You actually would. But I feel like it's down to Ange. I think Ange is almost like the father figure. And
Yeah,
then you've got like the brothers. There's such like a brotherhood like bond in the squad.
I think that's the word for it.
Yeah, because they're so connected. You see all these videos of like I saw a video earlier of like Mickey van der Ven picking Sar's ear, and then Sar like picks Porro's ear,
Yeah,
and they're like just sitting down together. It's like they just seem like brothers. But you seem so united. There's no cliques, and I think it's one down to Postecoglou just leaving the dressing room as it is, not getting
yeah,
involved. He's not disrupting anything. His presence isn't going to disrupt anything. He's off doing his own thing. And then you've got these connected players, these united players. And the leadership team is such a perfect balance. They're like three older
yeah,
brothers. You've got the smiley one that leads by example in Son. You've got that cheeky chappy in Maddison, and then you've got that scary, like older brother that beats the shit out of you, but also like seems like a nice guy in
yeah.
Romero.
Romero.
Do you know what I mean? And you know he's going to have your back. So like
Yeah,
you've got like the perfect balance, and I feel like everyone's just like flourishing under that environment.
it's
And then obviously they go out on the pitch, and it's like, oh, we have to impress Postecoglou, and it's like almost like sons doing their thing, and then
yeah.
the dad's sort of like overwatching. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that.
It's
It's
quality.
so true. And also, it comes back to that thing of like, I think it is a lot of it's down to Ange and like the fact that he's let them have that dressing room environment as their own. And then the
Yeah,
dressing room environment sort of spills out into like their social life and stuff as well. But then it's like when they get on the pitch, that father figure, it sort of comes full circle in the sense they just don't want to let him down.
yeah.
And yeah, it's quality to see. Like that's exactly the sort of stuff you want to see as a football fan.
Yeah.
And obviously you want to see it turn into something. But it's coupled alongside the fact that we're definitely going in the right direction as well. Like it's just all the kind of vibes are just perfect right now,
Yeah,
except for
yeah.
some other things, which we'll talk on probably later in the pod in terms of the season ticket prices and stuff. But yeah, they've from what we're seeing from the manager and the players, it's perfect right now.
Yeah, mate, it's looking good. How difficult do you reckon this game's going to be over the weekend? Obviously, Villa are 5 points above us, playing a game more. How do you reckon they'll exploit our weaknesses? How do you reckon they're going to set up? How can we overcome that?
It's massive. It's a huge game, and it will be really, really difficult. I think
Yeah,
it's probably our biggest game of the season so far, and will be one of our most difficult in terms of the context of the whole season. Because when you look at the fact that Villa have beaten City and Arsenal both at home, I don't think they've played Liverpool yet at Villa Park, but the top teams don't have a great record going there. Newcastle went there and got something, but it was a bit of a freak result. It felt like it felt like a bit of an anomaly in terms of where both teams have been going recently. Newcastle sort of on the slide a little bit. Obviously a win last weekend, and then Villa just have this crazy momentum. Obviously, United went there and did win though as well, so that's something to sort of factor in. But again, watching that game, it just felt like one of the ones that it was a classic United where they sort of squeaked through it and didn't really deserve it.
they both look
So it's
shit.
hard, yeah, and they did, yeah. But you probably say that Villa still come out on top. So it's hard to take much from that game. But when you look at the City and Arsenal games, because I think we're closer to that than we are closer to Man United. I think that's clear to see for everyone. So I think we should be comparing ourselves to those two and how they sort of went and found it difficult there. City really, really struggled. Villa just got on top of them. I'm pretty sure those two games as well were in like a week for Villa. One was a midweek and one was on the weekend. So it was back-to-back home games against the two best teams in the league right now. And Villa were incredible in the City game. They just completely overran them, made it so difficult, had so much of the ball. I can't remember the possession stats for City, but it was just like, it was frightening how little control they had on that game. Whereas Arsenal, it was a bit different. Villa tried to go at them, got an early goal, but Arsenal were always a threat in behind on the counter-attack. There were so many chances where they played the ball over the top and it just wasn't the right finish or wasn't the right cutback. And I think that's something that Spurs have got to look at ahead of Sunday, because obviously in the reverse fixture, it will be interesting to see how Villa set up, because I think they, despite winning at White Hart Lane, they would have definitely learned something about Tottenham from that. And I know that how their success rate in terms of catching teams offside, how well they use that high line, they will be confident that they'll be able to do it. But when you've got players that can time the runs like Son and Werner, and that, you know, that clever kind of picking, obviously they didn't have to face Werner last time around either. So it's going to be a real test for them, but it's going to be super difficult for Spurs, because you know that they're going to swing back punches. Obviously, I think there'll be a bit of a bitter taste in Spurs' mouth after the result at the start of the season, because we really didn't deserve to lose that game. Like, really didn't. It was one of those ones where, and we sort of talked about it on our first pod prior to the Palace game, about how we were sort of feeling off the back of Wolves going into that, and saying about how the Wolves game sort of left that taste in the mouth because of the fact that we've been really good in games that we've lost, but Wolves wasn't like that. But Villa was one of the examples where you walk away thinking, how did we lose that? And you walk away feeling really positive about what's to come. But now, like, if we walk away and lose on Sunday, despite how well we've played, it might feel a little bit different because of the time of the season that it's at, and the fact that we've got pretty much everyone back other than Richarlison.
Yeah.
But it's going to be really difficult, because Villa, in terms of attacking, like, wise as well, they're one of the most potent teams in the league. Ollie Watkins, the most goal contributions in the Premier League, I think, with 26, which is just nuts, like absolutely crazy. Like, the finishes against Luton, like the second one, I know it got flagged offside, but again, that just shows how clever he is. And obviously it got given, but like, in terms of how cleverly he can time his runs, we're going to want to play that high line. It's something that we're going to have to think about.
Yeah.
But Watkins is just on another level at the moment, and I think we'll talk about it in a bit, but like, the game is going to be won in that midfield, so it's going to be really tough for Tottenham. But I think we should go there with a bit of confidence. We know that we can cause them problems. We've seen it so far this season. It's just about having that discipline and taking the chances in front of goal.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I completely agree. I think with Villa, I think recently, I don't think their performances have been that sustainable. They were in such flying form, and they've sort of withered a little bit, but they're still like picking up results. But their performances just haven't been as consistent as they were before, probably in the last couple months. But the way both teams set up with both like high lines, there's going to be so many chances in the game, and I think, like you said, we deserve to win at home. And we had such a disjointed team as well. Like, Watkins was getting it behind Davis and Emerson, for example. Kulusevski was playing in the midfield. I can't actually remember who was playing alongside Kulusevski in that game. But
it was Bentancur and Lo Celso.
Yeah, and Bentancur had a good game until he got injured, obviously, and then we brought on Højbjerg. So I mean, that midfield is going to be completely different. We'll get onto midfield in a bit. And also, like you said, no Werner. Son was playing, wasn't he? But it's just, it was such a disjointed team, especially at the back. Without
I think Son had a hat trick of disallowed goals in that game, wasn't it?
Oh,
did he score 3 offside goals? Yeah.
So there's going to be so many chances like there were in that first game. But the thing I'm worried about with Villa is they scored with a set piece against us, and we haven't been that good with set pieces. And obviously, you've got players like Douglas Luiz, like set piece specialist Luca Dean, that could cause us problems in set pieces. So we need to be really smart when it comes to discipline, not making silly fouls. I know Bentancur, he kind of had to do it against Palace, but for example, like that, sort of let them get shot way over letting them have a free kick in a dangerous area, because they're so good at using those free kicks to score goals in those tight games where there's such a fine margin. So I think it will be a really difficult game. I'm not actually that confident, but because Villa's home record has been exceptional as well this season. It hasn't been as consistent recently, but their fans are going to be rocking, because this is their biggest chance of getting top 4 Champions League in decades. And also, obviously, Brighton lost against Roma in the Conference League. Aston Villa were held to a 0-0 draw against Ajax. So that 5th place spot is sort of drifting further and further away. So there's more jeopardy on this game. There's more jeopardy of getting Champions League. Obviously, if Villa win, they'll be 8 points above us. How do you reckon we can get past that, like their home advantage? How do you think we can do that? How are we gonna play to sort of make their fans quiet and to sort of stun this Villa team at home?
I think an early goal is crucial. I know that's a bit of a cliche that we always kind of refer back to, and obviously Tottenham haven't got a great record with that recently. We tend to go behind in a lot of games, like we did against
Yeah,
Palace, and we haven't started the best. So I think we're going to have to kind of break our nature really in that. I remember the Villa game that we went and beat them 4-0 a few years ago. We scored them in the first minute of the game. Sonny straight away, that volley from the edge of the box.
yeah,
Feels like we need something similar to just quiet them down, because as you said, like, this is a huge opportunity for them. If they win, they go 8 points clear. Spurs will still have a game in hand, but if their hand isn't firmly on top four already, it definitely will be. Definitely will be after Sunday if
yeah,
they get 3 points. And also, I think there may be a bit of nervousness that will creep into Villa around that. Like I said, they've been amazing against the top teams, but the likes of United and Newcastle have gone there and found a way. And United tried to soak up as much pressure as possible. And hit them on the counter-attack, which is what they did successfully. They had to ride it out a lot in that second half, and Villa should have been more clinical. And like I said, it didn't really reflect, the scoreline didn't reflect the nature of the game. And it'd be interesting to see whether Villa adapt their game to not go as gung-ho towards us, because they feel like there'll be gaps in behind, and they'll try and allow us onto them to then hit us over the top on the counter-attack, like I
yeah,
mentioned with Watkins, Bailey, who's just been incredible this season. I think
yeah,
a lot of people have raved about Diaby, but Bailey has just been superb, and running in those channels, there could be a real threat. But maybe a bit of nervousness will creep into Villa's game. Like you said, obviously, there's not really that safety net of fifth, because, after Brighton's exploits last night, and also how good was it to see Dybala last night? I made a TikTok about this earlier, but it's so painful to see him doing it in a Roma shirt and the Juventus shirt. Like, he should have been ours, but like, he's just,
yeah.
to see that last night was, to take some comfort from that game was quality. But obviously West Ham as well, losing last night, like,
Of
you'd
course.
imagine that West Ham will be able to turn it around in that game. Liverpool obviously won as well, and Liverpool winning the Europa League could be big for that. But it's just, I've kind of had this feeling all season that, because the narrative around it was almost at the start of the season like fifth place was guaranteed Champions League, and I think people have just sort of, as the season's gone on, they've sort of still been in that mode where actually it's got further and further away, and it's basically feels like it's going to be Germany's or Italy's. Obviously, there's a long way to go in Europe, but we can't rely on that. We can't. If you want Champions League football, you're going to go and have to get fourth, because we've been there in the past where we've finished fourth, and even fourth isn't enough. We've had that heartbreak where Chelsea won the Champions League. We can't go down to the final game of the season not knowing, if you want to be in the Champions League, not having that firm grip on it. So that's something that's going to be massive on Villa's minds ahead of Sunday, because like you said, if Spurs win, we close the gap to 2 points with a game in hand. And obviously, we've talked about our run-in in terms of how much of a say we're going to have on the title race, because we've got to play City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. I believe Aston Villa do as well. So there's going to be points. Obviously, you don't go into those games massively confident as Spurs fan, despite our record against City. And, we've seen Arsenal come to White Hart Lane before in a massive game and sort of crumble. There's not that confidence there, but also Spurs should take confidence from the fact that they've got to play all those games as well. They've got to go to the Etihad, they've got to go to the Emirates, and they've got Liverpool to come to Villa Park. So Sunday is a huge game, and I think it's actually in a way bigger for them than it is for us. And I think we almost have to go in it with that mentality, let them face the pressure, but go and assert ourselves on the game from early, whether that's scoring a goal or whether that's Romero putting one on someone. And obviously there's the whole Romero Matty Cash thing. I'm not saying it should be Matty Cash, but it's we have to stamp our mark on that game early on to have a chance of winning it, because I think the thing is with Villa, and we've seen that from the games against Arsenal, Man United, and Newcastle especially as well. City not so much, but if you can stay in the game against them, there will be chances for you, and it's just about taking them. So we've got to bear that in mind as well. But it's going to be really tricky.
Yeah, it's a huge game, and Postecoglou even said earlier this season he's not playing for fifth, mate. Yeah, that's like he said that in a press conference, and it's true. Like we can't think, oh, fifth. That's not a safety blanket. We need to go for the top four. So it's a huge game. I've got a little plan for how we're gonna sort of stun the Villa crowd and get the upper hand when we're playing away. I think so. The whistle goes. Villa play it out wide to Matty Cash. Then a raging red Romero comes storming up the pitch. Fucked off, splits him in half. Matty Cash is lying on the floor in two pieces. Ange Postecoglou, obviously, he's by the touchline. Ange Postecoglou looks like he's consulting him. He just whispers in his ear, "That's for Bentancur, mate." And don't
forget Doherty either.
Yeah, don't think I've got a prime Doherty before I was even here, mate. You little gimp. And then Matty Cash is crying. The Villa fans are crying, and then we run away with it and get the 3 points. Leave it. Nah, but I'm joking. But apart from that, we need to keep our heads in this game. We need to be screwed
Yeah,
on.
that's important.
We need to be composed on the ball, not doing anything silly, not letting the occasion get to us. But also I know it doesn't really go with Postecoglou's sort of philosophy, but we need to be ugly in this game when it comes to
Yeah.
stuff like time wasting. Frustrate the Villa fans. Don't let them get that momentum. When we're under pressure, time waste.
Yeah.
Try and take that pressure off us. Not trying to. I don't think we will change it, but when we're under pressure and then we try and play out of the back and everything's so quick, everything's so intense. All of a sudden, there's a mistake because of the occasions getting to us. So I think this game we've got to be a little bit more smart when it comes to sort of game management, how we want to play. Obviously, play our football, but just be a little bit ugly with it. I think anything to frustrate those Villa fans. And kill every momentum Villa can gain. I think that's going to be huge.
100%. Villa Park it can be, it is a bit of a fortress for them, but it can be a cauldron in terms of that atmosphere. Villa are a great club. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Villa because they are they're a proper team and they're a proper fan base as well. And it can be a really intimidating place to go. Hostile, that's the word, exactly. Like it's one of those things where, like you said, Spurs need to keep their heads, but they need to assert themselves on the game in some way to just shut them up a little bit. Whether that, like I said, whether it's an early goal, whether it's a big tackle, or whether it's just like taking your time with things as well. Just enough teams do it to us with time wasting and stuff like that. It's about a bit of time we kind of put that gamesmanship back a little bit, and we've got the players to play ugly as well. Like we really do. We've got some warriors. We've got some proper scrappers. And obviously as well, like sort of tactically, obviously, with that high line that Spurs will play, and obviously Villa, you'd imagine, will play as well. Obviously, they didn't have to face Van der Ven last time. So Watkins against Van der Ven is going to be a huge battle in that channel. Obviously, he likes to veer off into both. And I think that's the danger of Watkins, is that he is quite hard to pick up. But, we've seen what Van der Ven can do. We called him a cheat code on the last pod, and that's exactly what he is. But I think this is going to be one of his biggest tests.
Yeah,
Watkins isn't the quickest, but he's so difficult to stop because of his clever movement. Yeah. And that's always what he's been. He was a wire player, he's a striker, he's always that grafter, like the one that will run the channels, and he's got so much quality as well. So it's going to be tough, but yeah, we need to go and just shut them up. Just stamp our authority in the game. Do what we did a few years ago. Go and make it. Go and, stamp your authority and go and just fucking go and win.
Yeah, it's massive. It's such a massive game. Both teams are going to play such a high line. So it's going to be such a weird game in the fact that it's going to be so compact in the midfield. It benefits us massively that Kamara's out injured. I saw something like Jacob Ramsey's a bit of a doubt, I think. I'm not sure. Don't trust me on that because I don't know if he'll play. I don't know if it's an actual injury or not. But Kamara is definitely out with that, I think, ACL. But obviously they'll have Douglas Luiz, Zaniolo, they've got McGinn, they've got I know Diaby sometimes comes central as well. They got some incredible players in that midfield. So that midfield battle is going to be so important. It's so compact, and that's going to be the way either team's going to win. Who would be your midfield choice for the game? And does Sarr come back in? Because obviously Bentancur was subbed off. He's not in the best form, but he was much better last weekend. But does Sarr come back in for you? Who are you going to start?
I think Sarr definitely has to come back, just because of how, like we said earlier, like that game is going to be won in the midfield for either side, and their midfield is arguably in the best part of their team and what has made them so successful this season. But Sarr has to come in for me again, just for those legs, just for that combative nature in the midfield, just for the transition as well, because that's going to be super key in terms of bringing the ball out. And then between Basuma and Bentancur, it's a really tricky one. I would probably edge it towards Basuma, but I actually think it could be a game that could go one or two ways with Bentancur, because the way that Villa will want to press, Bentancur is so good at kind of being press resistant and able to drive Spurs out of situations.
Yeah.
We sort of saw that against Villa in the home game when he sort of first came back. But I do think just Basuma getting back into that rhythm, I thought he was really, really good against Palace, and I wouldn't necessarily change him, and I think I'd keep Basuma in. And I would probably go with Sarr over Bentancur personally, just for those legs. But I also think it's one of those games where Spurs want to sort of shore it up and have a bit more of a foothold in it and control the game in the second half. Like we talked about this on the pod on Monday about, I think the reason that he went with that midfield balance of Basuma, Bentancur and Maddison on on Saturday against Palace was just because he knew that we were going to have a lot more of the ball. Whereas I think on Sunday it's going to be a lot more chaotic in that midfield, and that's when you're going to really need to stamp your authority on the game. So I think just because of the fact that Bissouma's in that slightly better rhythm at the moment, and because of how big a game it is, I'd probably go with Biss personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'll go for Bissouma, Sarr, Madison. I think Sarr's so good at like his obviously his work rate, the intensity. I think it'll be too intense of a game for Bentancur. I still don't think he's trusting his body too much, and obviously the press is going to be so intense. And he's normally so good at resisting pressure, but I just don't think he's sharp enough yet. So I think
we saw that in the Brighton game. Yeah, we saw that in the Brighton game, didn't we? Like,
exactly.
Teams that want to sort of come onto us and press high and make it difficult, he really, really struggled.
Exactly.
It was almost like the game was just happening around him in that first sort of 20, 30 minutes. And it was almost like you're looking at him thinking, you might have to get him off before half time. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but it was one of them for Bentancur. It's tricky with him as well because he's going to need minutes. Like, the only way he's going to get back to that best is obviously with a pre-season under Postecoglou, which we talked about on Monday. He hasn't had. Which is going to be so vital. But also in the meantime, it's good. It's about minutes, but it's just like almost the games are too crucial at the moment to sort of have someone in there that you're sort of trying to get back up to full fitness. It's really tricky as well because I love him so much, and it hurt to sort of see the reaction that he had on the bench on Saturday.
Yeah.
He didn't look too happy. And he's someone that, universally the Spurs fans all absolutely love to sort of see him go through that. And like you said, it's almost like he's not trusting his body. So it must be very difficult for him as much as anyone. So, but it's going to be a big decision for Postecoglou to make. I just think Sarr's kind of sniffing and reading out of the danger as well. Something that doesn't really get talked about so much. People sort of see him as this box-to-box leggy midfielder, which he's amazing at. But his defensive awareness a lot of the time when he's sniffing out of the danger, especially when, like you said, you've got forwards that will want to dip into midfield for Villa. They usually set up in more of like a 4-4-2 Villa, but it's so fluid and so hard to track some of these runners and hard to pick up who's going to sort of go on and drive with the ball. Like Jacob Ramsey is a really good point because, or sort of to bring him up is a good point because I've just had a look and apparently he was out for the Ajax game, but he might be back for Sunday. We'll see. But when you look at how Man United really struggled to track the run of Ramsey, that in that sort of left inside channel, every single time Ramsey was going beyond Casemiro. I mean, I could run off Casemiro, I think, but like they just weren't picking up the run of Ramsey, like in that left inside channel, and having Sarr in that position, I think to help with that and just sort of that awareness of what's going on around him will be massive for us. So I would go with Sarr. Obviously, there's no guarantee that Ramsey's going to be fit, but that's what Ramsey's game is sort of built on. He is that third man runner sort of midfielder. I really like Ramsey personally.
Yeah.
But even if it's not Ramsey, you're going to still have that same issue with other players. So, I just think Sarr is too crucial in this game not to play.
Yeah, like you said, he does the dirty work so efficiently. I think Bentancur last season would have been ideal for this game. It's just, I think I would just have Sarr ahead of him. Also, the attack is going to be vital for this game because obviously getting in behind that defence, timing their runs, trying to anticipate that offside trap. Who would you play in the attacking three? Because Brennan Johnson was so good off the bench last week. Werner was quality, Son was quality. Obviously, Richarlison's out. Who would you go for?
I think it's a really tough one. I think there's two spots in that front three that are a no-brainer, and obviously one of them is Sonny. Still no Richarlison. We heard prior to the game today in the press conference, he won't be available. And I think the game will sort of suit Sonny more anyway, even if Richarlison was fit. I think we didn't really expect Son to have the sort of performance that he did against the low block on Saturday. I thought he was excellent as that sort of focal point in the team. But it's games like this where I think almost suit that role for him a lot more. We saw the joy that he had against Villa, although he was caught offside marginally a few times in that game and could have had a hat-trick. And I think for the same reason, I think Werner still has to continue down that left-hand side just because of the way it's so set up for him if Villa want to come onto us to be able to spring them and turn them around and play those sort of balls over the top or in the channels to Werner. And I think that also one of the things in Werner's favour as well in terms of being selected is the fact that I think that relationship with Udogie and Werner is getting there now. I think sometimes a lot of people were critical of Udogie not finding Werner enough, but I actually thought on the flip side of that, a lot of it was Werner sort of making those runs too early and being maybe a bit too eager at points. It was both of them. But I think now we saw it against Palace, that little triangle down that left-hand side of Maddison, Werner and Udogie, I think is really starting to come together quite nicely. And I just think with Werner, with the confidence of the goal last week as well, like we sort of talked about in the pod on Monday about the fact that he scored in the game that really wasn't suited for him to play in necessarily. And he still had a really good performance and obviously could have had another one when Spurs turned Palace over for that chance. And there's going to be moments for Werner like that in the game. And I think you just have to keep playing and to sort of keep building that confidence. And obviously on that same theme, you look at Johnson in the sense that that was his, like we said, he's come on and scored in games against Brentford and Brighton in the past and sort of had a big impact on them in that way. But I think his overall impact on the game in terms of the way that he played against Palace, there to prove a point almost, was the best we've seen Johnson.
Yeah.
So it'll be really unfortunate for him maybe not to get a starting berth. Again, when you think about what his game is sort of all about and the fact that Villa might play into his hands. But I just think that we sort of talked about the fact that he's a little bit of a cheat code off the bench. And I just don't think that Kulusevski off the bench would have necessarily the same impact.
Yeah,
and I think as well with Kulusevski, he had an amazing game against Villa a few years ago at Villa Park. And obviously I know it's a completely different side to what it is now. But I think he's gone there and shown that he can perform there. And I think what he did so well in that game, obviously Spurs were set up entirely differently, was just he scored a goal, but he also, the way he linked up the play, was involved in every move. And I think the fact that Villa are going to want to come on to us, we're going to have another playmaker on that pitch, aside from Maddison, to be able to spot those runs from Sonny and Kulusevski and offer that, Sonny and Werner, and offer that little bit more balance in attack. I think that, there is an element of sort of total football in having a pacey attack of Son, Johnson and Werner. And I would, if that was, if I'm up on the train onto Villa on Sunday morning and I see that's going to be the team, it's exciting. But I just think that, Kulusevski, he's so underappreciated in what he does for Spurs. I actually thought he had a pretty decent game against Palace last weekend, despite not getting on the score sheet or getting an assist or anything. And I think people that get too caught up in that sort of stuff. And I think that people have got this conception around like the way that Ange Postecoglou wants to play and that they feel like Kulusevski doesn't really fit into that as an archetypal Ange winger. But I think he just offers too much to the team to not be a starter in these massive games for us in terms of what he sacrifices, his work rate, and also his calmness in sort of picking out that pass. And I think Johnson doesn't really have that. And I think that there is a danger that despite the fact that we could hit them on the counter-attack and it could be very exciting going forward, there is also an element that it could be a little bit too hectic and almost panicky in those situations, because we know that Werner isn't the most composed in front of goal, whereas I think Kulusevski just brings that a little bit and offers more balance. I don't know what you think on that.
No, I completely agree. I think, in this sort of game, Kulusevski, for his composure and the balance is such a key word there, because I feel like it would be too gung-ho having Brennan, Werner and Son just constantly going forward. I feel like you do need that little bit of composure, sort of the intricate passing, the keeping hold of the ball, progressive carries. That's what Kulusevski brings. And he's up against, he'll probably be up against Luka Dean, but he might be up against Moreno. I don't know if for 1v1s, Brennan Johnson would be able to take on Dean as much as good as well as Kulusevski. I think he would just add that bit of composure. We'd be able to keep the ball a bit more. It won't be as erratic. And then when they're tiring, and because we're going to be constantly testing that back line with the runs of Son and Werner, Brennan Johnson comes on with half hour to go, fresh legs, doing the exact same thing. It's going to be so hard for Villa to keep up with that when it comes to fitness and the intensity. Like we were saying last week, he will be a cheat code again in this game. It's perfect for him. This is a game where the game's going to be stretched. It's perfect for Brennan Johnson to come off of the bench. But I would start with Kulusevski. I think let's talk about Kulusevski, because he is a player that divides a lot of opinion at Spurs. I actually think he's one of our most undervalued players. What do you think of him?
I love him. I absolutely love him. I think the problem is that people have got too caught up in what he did in that first sort of 5 or 6 months when he came in, and it was almost like people have this assumption that he was banging goals in the top corner every single week in that run, but he wasn't. It was all about the thing. Obviously, he scored some beautiful goals in that little run that he had. I remember the one against Norwich on the final day of the season. And it's almost like because we've seen it with the likes of Bale, it brings back those kind of memories, and I think it's easy to get lost in that sometimes. But I just think from minute one, the thing that I've been so impressed with is his work rate, his quality on the ball. I get that he can be frustrating, and I think people get too caught up in this whole thing about his pace. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't ever feel like he's slowing us down. I really don't ever feel like that.
I agree.
Yes, I'm not saying he's been amazing every game this season, but I think he's probably been our most underappreciated player this year. He had a bit of a struggle last season. He couldn't, but again, like so did Romero, so did Sonny, so did all of these other players. The environment wasn't right. You know, it all went wrong under Conte last season. We weren't going in the same direction as we are now. He's a joke of a player. He's not your kind of typical modern winger in the sense that he's got that pace and well, I was going to say pace and power, but he certainly has got power. You
Yeah,
know,
he's
he's a
so
strong.
strong.
He's like a so strong. Try and get the ball off him. Like I think a lot of fullbacks would say that pacey wingers are difficult to defend against, but I would hate to defend against Kulusevski because he just can use his body. The way he uses it so well, he's so skillful, so intelligent.
So unique because he's so
So,
one-footed as well. It's
yeah,
almost so predictable what he's going to do, but he just gets his body in the way and just holds players off.
yeah.
Sorry.
Bale was predictable.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
Bale
yeah.
was predictable. Like, you know, but you can't stop it. And I'm not saying Kulusevski's anywhere near that level, but you know, there's people get too caught up in this one-footed thing, and yes, it can be frustrating. But you've also seen him take chances with his right foot. I thought he put a beautiful cross in with his right foot for Sonny on Saturday, the one where he hit the post. And
Yeah.
what I like about him is that you know some of these pacey sort of wingers, especially that Spurs have got, I think sometimes are almost in that. And I've been full of praise for Werner and Johnson, but sometimes it's almost like too head down and that road runner and you make sure you use your pace. But Kulusevski always plays the game with his head up. Such an intelligent player. Like I think when you look at Pep Guardiola, the way City have sort of built that team, he would fit in really well for that to me.
Yeah, he
So
would be.
intelligent.
Yeah.
I think as well, Guardiola sort of name checked Kulusevski so many times. Remember that video that went around where he was like, Kulusevski, what a player in the press conference. Like he's just like, he's so intelligent. And I think it's one of those things where he must be a dream for coaches. And I get why he can be frustrating for Spurs fans. But I think people have got too many preconceptions about modern wingers and the fact that they should be pacey and dribbly and all this kind of stuff. And actually, there's been another debate that's kind of come around about Kulusevski because we saw him play in the 10 a lot this season when Maddison was out injured. What is his best position? Is it as a winger? Is it as a 10? Kulusevski's sort of come out and said that he feels that he is more comfortable in that 10.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at the way we set up under Conte when he first came, because of the higher wing backs, those Kulusevski and Sonny were more playing as number 10s anyway, or like in traditional inside forwards. They were playing more centrally, and he always spoke about the fact that he maybe felt more comfortable in that. But I just think that you think of the relationship he's got with Porro down that side as well, and obviously a massive boost for us having Porro back on Sunday, which we'll get on to. And Sarr, that just feels like that. Like I said about a doggy Maddison and Werner, just blending nicely down, marinating down that side. Side. Kulusevski, Porro, and Sarr have got that just relationship down to a T, I think. And in that sort of big game, those relationships on the pitch are going to be really important. So I'll definitely start Kulusevski on Sunday. But in terms of the wider view on him, I just think he's incredibly underappreciated. Got so much technical quality. I get it. I do get why he can sort of divide that opinion. But for me, I firmly sit in the camp of I think he's one of our most important and underrated players.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think also another thing with Maddison, when Maddison was out, he was so underappreciated. How he just come in and it didn't really affect anything. I know we weren't the same without Maddison, but we didn't miss him to the extent of we have no creativity. As of January, Kulusevski was top. Was it? I think top 3 in open play chances created in Europe's top 5 leagues. Also, in January he was second of most distance covered by a Premier League player. So he's so vital. He does the stuff you don't really notice. He works so hard. His pressing so vital for the way we set up without the ball. That it just goes on. Those are the stuff where it's not flashy, so it goes unnoticed. Because he isn't a flashy player. He isn't aesthetically pleasing. He's quite clunky and he's one-footed, but he does so effectively. And he does such to a high level, and he just makes it look way easier than it is. He does remind me of Bernardo Silva, the fact that he can be such a versatile player for us. He's so good at progressing the ball, keeping hold of the ball, and obviously he doesn't look anything like Bernardo Silva, but in that sort of like way of he's versatile. He could probably play centre mid, and we'll know how important he is to this team once we're in Europe next year, with him playing. With his versatility, playing on the wing, playing in the middle, maybe even playing as an 8, and also we've seen it. Postecoglou does it when we're not creating enough, when we're losing it in a game with a low block. He'll just shift Kulusevski as a number 8 with Maddison, and it's so effective. Yeah. He's such a key player for us, but he does go underappreciative.
Underappreciated.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's funny you say that about Bernardo Silva. I was trying to just find it just then, but I remember last year, sort of midway through the season, there was a graph that came out around Bernardo Silva, and sort of his numbers and his stats. And it was like, guess who the other player is compared in that graph. And it was like, no, obviously you wouldn't think it in terms of the aesthetics, but it was Kulusevski.
Yeah.
Like they are actually very similar in what they do. Obviously completely different styles, but very similar in the way that they sort of play the game.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting that you sort of bring up that comparison. They're completely different stylistically, but also like so similar in what they're being asked to do.
Yeah.
I was trying to find it just then, but my Twitter was just bugging out for some reason.
I guarantee every player on that pitch playing for Spurs loves him. Just loves playing with him. Because another thing, he's so unselfish as well. He's always trying to get that like assist. In fact, I think he actually does that too much, where he should just shoot.
Yeah,
but he's always looking for his teammate. I feel like if I was his teammate, I'd be like, "Cheers, I saw what you're trying to do. Cheers. Next time, shoot, because we need to fucking score."
Yeah.
But
and also, he's got that quality. Like that is one of the frustrating things in the sense that, like, I know, like I said, I do think Spurs fans almost convinced themselves that every single week he was bending goals in the top corner, which wasn't the case. But he can do it, and that's why people just think, "Go on, just give it a go." I remember he scored the goal that he scored at Villa Park a few years ago, just bang across the goalkeeper. Like he was on that sort of run, so confident. I just remember with Kulusevski, like it's going on a bit of a tangent, but I remember that first game of the season against Southampton last season, where we beat them 4-1, and everything felt amazing, and it was like we could win the league. Like fucking hell, like we are so good, like kicking on. He was just amazing in that game. And that is one performance that's always stuck with me with Kulusevski. He scored in it, but it was just about what he did off the ball. There was one piece of skill where he just absolutely did someone. I was just like, I've been in love with him ever since he sort of stepped foot in the door. And like, he's just an example of like Brennan Johnson or Richarlison, where like people, I remember Kulusevski's debut, I think, was against Brighton in the FA Cup. He came off the bench. And there was a chance where he sort of got to the edge of the penalty area, really slowed down, didn't take on his man. And everyone around me in the ground was like, fucking, he's shit, too slow, blah, blah, blah. Just wait. Just don't go too early on players like that. And I think it's a lesson for a lot of people when obviously, you know, we talked about Brennan Johnson way too much this season, like way too much. There's been too much of a debate around whether he's good enough. And I think that people need to look at players like that and think, just you wait and just give him a little bit of a chance. But no, I love Decky. He's just superb. One of the most unconventionally brilliant footballers. Just love him.
Yeah. I was one of those people in the crowd. I was at that game and I was like, he's fucking shit. Like, look at him.
Because also Bentancur came on and like did this amazing piece of skill. I remember, and everyone was like, he's the good, like, because Kulusevski was made out to be like the one that was like, oh shit, like we need to bolster our attacking line. Bentancur was sort of like, oh yeah, like, because I think Villa were in for Bentancur, actually. We got him under the noses of Villa.
Yeah.
And it was almost like there wasn't really any hype around it. It was like 13-14 million or something, and people weren't that excited about Bentancur. Yeah. But I remember he came on, did a little drag back on the edge of his own penalty area and got away, and it was like, okay.
And he sent that ball out wide, didn't he? Like he switched the ball and it was like perfect. Yeah. Everyone was like, fucking hell, who's this guy?
Yeah. We've just signed fucking De Bruyne or whatever.
Like, Prime Zidane.
But no, I love Kulusevski. I think unconventionally brilliant is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. With the way Villa play, what position in this game do you think's are most vital to overcome this Villa team? Is it our defence being pushed back by those runs from Watkins, or is it the midfield battle, or is it the attackers? What do you think?
I know this is sort of massively sitting on the fence, but like I think that it's all of it. I don't think there's one single position where it's going to be more important than the other. I think one area definitely to highlight is obviously Pedro Porro being back. It's massive for us because he sort of ticks all of those boxes of what you just talked about. Is it the defence? Is it the midfield? Is it going forward? Because having someone that obviously his defensive ability has gone up tenfold this season under Postecoglou. So having him back from a defensive point of view, first and foremost, is amazing because we're going to have to deal with the likes of Bailey, Watkins, Diaby, whoever he does decide to play running in those channels. He's to have him back. And he's going to be so up for it as well. It's that sort of player that gets up for these kind of games. And we were talking about that sort of fighting spirit earlier. Like having him back is huge. But also with the inverted fullbacks, the way he tucks into midfield, creates that overload, getting into that midfield battle as well, is going to be so key. But when you think about the ability that he can play balls over the top and getting his head up quickly for the likes of Werner or whether it is Johnson, obviously you'd imagine it's going to be Porro to Werner with that diagonal switch or switch over the top to Sonny as well through the middle. Just having him to get there, stuck in, look up, bang, pass. Like, he's got so much quality with that. We saw it in the Newcastle game, the way he can play balls over the top. The Burnley game away, that ball he played round the corner for Sonny to go on and just go and finish it. Just like, I've done all the work, just go and put it in the back of the net. And like, you can see that being a massive thing, hopefully, for Spurs on Sunday. So having Porro back is huge. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the most important area, but I think it's just a massive boost to have him back. I think because he knits together all the fundamental assets that Spurs are going to need to win the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think the defence and the midfield probably are most key. I mean, obviously, like you're saying, everything is, but I think for the way we're going to have to play out the back from that pressure from Villa, how they set up, how they make everything so compact, so difficult. I think defence is going to be is going to have to play the game of their life playing out for the back, but also when Ollie Watkins is constantly making those darting runs past them, they've got to be on their toes. Van de Ven is going to be a massive game for him. Romero, but also the other way around when they're on the ball playing out from the back. Romero is another player that can do those long balls. So he's going to be essential. And what Villa like to do is when Ollie Watkins breaks that back line barrier, he'll get the ball in the box. He'll look up and he'll cut it back quite a lot. So like you were saying earlier, we have to follow the runners into the box, and that's the midfield's job. We have to do that, otherwise they're going to score at least 2 in this game. That's something they love to do. And the midfield as well, because it's going to be so compact. We've got to be with our link-up play, the intricacy of our passing, and just wriggling out of pressure. We need to be at the top of our game because Villa are so good, so organised, and they're so good with that press. Who do you think is going to be our most important player in the game?
I think it's hard probably to look past, despite us sort of talking about that we can pose them a real threat. I think it's hard to look past Van de Ven, maybe. Van de Ven and Romero, just because of, like you said, that managing of their own penalty area. Obviously, that probably falls more on Romero than Van de Ven as the more experienced player, as the captain in that back line. Obviously, not the captain, but part of the vice captaincy, but he is the leader of that back line.
Yeah.
But I just think Van de Ven, we saw his importance against Palace. We've seen it time and time again when Spurs have gone away from home. Everton, we saw it, like those balls over the top, like, he's going to have, again, the game of his life, but he seems to be having the game of his life every single week at the moment. So he's going to be so, so crucial to us. I know it's a bit of a boring answer. I just think that without him, this game, I think, would look entirely different. But actually, I think a lot of it's Basuma and Sarr as well as a sort of tandem, a bit of a pivot in that midfield, just because, like you said, I know Man United went and run there, but they are just, and we saw it at City last week with Foden's second goal, and we've seen it as a theme of United all season when they got beat at home to Fulham. They are allergic to tracking the runners. They just cannot pick runners up from midfield. And like you said, all the good teams, Tottenham are included in that. Tottenham, Aston Villa, Man City and Arsenal, maybe Liverpool aside, in terms of the way that you see them scoring their best goal is that work into the byline, cutting it back, and someone there to sweep it in. Villa do it all the time. Arsenal do it all the time. It's sort of become that. They've called it like the O-zone in the box where Odegaard can run into and just sweep it home. How many times have we seen him do that this season? Villa the same. He's really annoying. City have built a whole system around that under Pep Guardiola, and Villa are the same. Especially, obviously, we talked about whether the fact that Ramsey, don't know whether he's going to be fit, but whether it's Ramsey, McGinn, or Luiz, they all love popping up in the penalty area and scoring goals. I think Luiz scored a brace against Forest, I think, in the last home game that Villa had. Scored against Man United. McGinn scored against Arsenal. It's these games where it's, the midfield, it's about tracking those runners into the box, because Villa are that sort of cutback, cutback FC as well, as you like Arsenal and City. And Spurs try and do exactly the same thing. So, it's all the good teams, that's kind of the way you fundamentally want to score a goal. Drag players all over the place, create the space for your best player to come in and finish it, like Odegaard for Arsenal. So Spurs are going to have to be very wary of that. So I think it's a toss-up between those two key partnerships of Sarr and Basuma and Romero and Van de Ven for me. I know it's not one player, but yeah.
Well, I was thinking Basuma just because he's so press resistant, and you're gonna have someone pressing him constantly because he's that player that links the midfield and the defense. But he's so good at resisting the pressure, wriggling out of that man marking sort of defensive system that Aston Villa will set up, but loads of teams have tried to deploy on Basuma, and then attracting more players to him as he progresses up the pitch, and that just frees up Maddison. And then we could set Maddison free, who can set down Werner on the wing or Son, etc. So I think Basuma or Van de Ven will be key for us. I really do. I think that's how we're going to win the game. And obviously, we've talked about how important the midfield battle is. A little bit of fun is, well, not for Villa, but fun for us to do, is that Villa are in financial trouble. They've released a statement saying, I think, how much did they lose? Like 90 mil or something like that.
It was a lot of money. It wasn't quite
Yeah.
Chelsea levels, but it was.
No.
It wasn't great.
Yeah. My question is, who, if you had to sign a player from Aston Villa, who would it be? Who would fit the system?
Well, I'm going to try and be. This is going to sound so boring because it's like if you're thinking of it in the situation that they find themselves in financial fair play, the way they're going to raise funds is by selling a homegrown player, and I actually think it's probably two of the players that I would have picked anyway, regardless. Obviously, I think Bailey or Diaby, who would be amazing in terms of adding that X factor to our attack. But I mean, these two players are pretty impressive as well. It's just picking between one of them. But obviously, for me, it's either Ollie Watkins or Jacob Ramsey. Because I think if Spurs had Watkins, we would. I think any team. The thing is, Watkins will not leave Villa. Like I think he's there now he's like 27, 28. He's older than people realise. Very settled there. Their main man. Like he's not going to leave. But if I could pick anyone, it probably would be Watkins. But making it more realistic, so to speak, I would probably go for Jacob Ramsey, just because I think there's been a lot of chat around Conor Gallagher and that sort of midfield profile that Spurs need, that pressing midfielder who's going to sort of pop up and score those goals as well, cover the ground for you. I think Jacob Ramsey would be an amazing alternative to Gallagher. I've loved Ramsey for a long, long time. He's just, he breaks those lines. He can arrive in the box. He's hard to pick up.
Yeah.
I think he's a midfielder that could really add another dynamic to Spurs' midfield. It just feels right as well. Like it just feels like, I don't know what it is. Like we've spoke about this a lot with like Eze and stuff, but Ramsey feels like a Tottenham player.
Yeah,
Can't
it's a
explain
bit dazzle
it.
about him.
Yeah, and it's just like I really, really like Jacob Ramsey. So I'd probably, in terms of being the most realistic option, I'd probably go for Ramsey. I reckon.
Yeah, is Douglas Luiz homegrown? Because he was part of the City Academy. I don't know if he.
That's a good point.
Went on loads of loans and stuff, but
that is a good point.
I would go for. I mean, I'd agree with Watkins, but I just think I don't know if he's going to get any better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's quality at getting him, but he would fit the system so well. I think a few would. Jacob Brown.
But then again, we probably said that about Watkins. I know it's different because he's gone from like 27 to 28 is like a big step, and like he's obviously nearer the 30s now. But like we probably said that about Watkins last year. Like, is he going to get any better? Actually. And he's just like this season, most goals and assists in the league. Like he's just fantastic.
Yeah, so good, and definitely should be in the England squad over Tony. Tony's a bit of a knobhead. I think he'd just
he's also better than Tony in my opinion.
Yeah, he's
I genuinely think he's better than Tony.
But I think I'll go for Douglas Luiz. I think Douglas Luiz would fit our system in the fact that he could play number 6, but actually this season he's been deployed as more of a number 8 for Villa, penetrating that box constantly. Like I said, he scored so many goals. His technique's also amazing. He can play. He's a penalty taker. He's so good from the spot, and that's something we kind of. I mean, we don't really have that designated penalty taker. Probably Sonny, but Luiz is so efficient from the spot. But also he does the dirty work. He's press resistant and he's versatile. He can play in that Basuma Bentancur role or that box to box role. But he just costs so much money. He's 25. He costs so much money, and he's such a player that Arsenal going to sign. Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can see that coming. I was talking about this with my stepdad last night. You can just see them nicking him. They don't even need him. Don't need him. They've got they've got the second best DM in the Premier League, if not the world, in Declan Rice. You don't need to. That's just greedy.
No. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I've just seen something on Twitter that I wanted to read out to you. So
go for it.
Kind of going back to what we were saying about the Champions League and how big a game Sunday is. I think Postecoglou has once again just given a perfect answer. So he got asked on how important Champions League qualification is, and he said it's not. Actually, what's more important is that come the end of this season, we've got a team that's going to challenge the following year and keep growing. Right now, the most important thing is our identity and our football, because just getting into it, mate, it's not a Willy Wonka golden ticket, you know. It just gets you a year in the Champions League, but if you don't build on that or grow from that, it's meaningless, I think, anyway, because we're not in it for participation, we're in it to win things. Yes, if we make Champions League this year and it means we progress from last year, but has our football progressed? Are we a better team? Are we a stronger team? Are we going to improve in the summer to make sure that next year we're going to be even better? I just don't get how he just gets it every single time, like bang on the money. Like that's exact. I don't know how you feel about that, but like someone like it feels as if like in the past, like Sunday's a massive game and being back in the Champions League for Spurs will be huge, but it feels as if Champions League football's almost like been like having the Champions League as like qualifying for the Champions League as the target has almost felt good enough. Where actually now we've got a manager who I think is showing even more ambition for the long term than the win now managers that we've had in the past. It's just like it's so refreshing. Yeah, exactly. It takes that pressure off, but also just it's taking the pressure off, but also reassuring the fans and the players that we're going in that right direction. It's where we want to be. The Champions League is where we want to be, but we want to be in it to win it. We don't want to be there just on by default. You know, exactly. How do you feel about that?
What you just said.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God. It's enough to make a grown man rock hard.
I thought you were going to say cry, but I was sort of feeling myself a bit bruised up.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to put a pillow on my lap after listening to that quote. Can you love him anymore? Everything he says is it just fills you with so much security as a fan. It just fills you with so much joy and that we're on this journey and that we're at the right trajectory and there's not pressure to win like there has been over all these years. And I feel like you've seen it this season as well, of like not having Kane. If we lose a game, it's not like he needs to leave Spurs to win trophies.
Takes the pressure just down a little bit. Yeah,
we lose, and it's, you know what? As long as we play well, there's things to take away from that game. We are on a journey, and we are going in the right direction. So just be patient. There's that calmness of that and that security of just, look, we are where we want to be at the moment. It's our first season, and if we're in the Champions League, great. But the most important thing isn't that if we're in the Champions League, it's if we're playing better football, if we refine our game plan, if we start our recruitment keeps going as how it's going, and that's all you want to see as a fan. You want to feel like you're going somewhere. You don't want to feel stuck like you did under Conte and Mourinho, where it's all or nothing, and if it fails, we're fucked. Like with Postecoglou, okay, we were in a title race, like so to speak, at the beginning of the season. That was fun, but we didn't care that much when we were out the title race because we were like, okay, we were overachieving. This is a long-term project, and you just feel so much more calm and confident going into the next few seasons, especially with the team being so young. And we know we just got to be patient. This team will build and build and build, and all these players will get into their prime, and we will be a colossal, and we will be so good. And obviously with the FFP sorting us out, we could recruit. Our recruitment's going to be in line with how we've seen the other top teams spend their money. Obviously, we've been patient. That's going to get better for us. Our spending's going to improve, hopefully. So, I feel like we're just heading in the right direction. There's so much to be excited about, Spurs.
Yeah. I think what you've just said there in terms of bringing it back to the sort of title race at the start of the season is so important as well, because I was just thinking as I was reading that tweet out to you, or the quote from his press conference, was all I can see is like the rival fans underneath that guy, and that's just not the winner mentality. That's so Spursy, blah, 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 blah. Actually, it's the complete antithesis of that for a start. But also, I think it comes back to this thing, and we sort of talked about it a little bit after the Palace game or before the Palace game in terms of Palace fans and the way that it feels like everybody is having a say on their club, but it's actually down to them how they feel. It's the same with Spurs. Like, nobody can tell us how to feel, how we should feel as Spurs fans. That quote there, from the outside, might look as if like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean not getting the Champions League is, like, what do you mean it's not important? Blah blah blah. So Spursy, not that winning mentality, not the elite mentality, etc. etc. Actually, it's exactly where Spurs are at, and exactly how 90% of this fan base feels. I think that we know that we're not good enough to be in the Champions League. Probably not. We are good enough, because if we qualify for it, you are by default good enough.
Yeah.
But it's not actually that we're not good enough. It's more just the fact of like having that steady progression, having those building blocks in place, whether it's the Champions League or Europa League next year. We shouldn't put too much pressure on it being the Champions League, but we know that we're going in the right direction, no matter if we lose 3 on the bounce, about the bigger picture. And because football fandom now is all about just having a dig about other clubs, and we all do it, we're all guilty of it. Football makes hypocrites out of everyone. That's one thing that I will always resonate from something that Flav has said time and again. He always says it, football makes hypocrites out of everyone. It's so true. We all do it. We all take the piss out of Arsenal if they lose 2 games in the bounce. We all do it. But it's just, deep down, you're doing that because you think you're scared that they're going in the right direction, which they are. And it's the same with Spurs. Like, no one will ever take us seriously unless we win something. That is just a fact. Like, no one will ever take us seriously. But that doesn't matter. I don't give a shit. Like, as long as we know that we're going in the right direction, that is absolutely fine.
Yeah, exactly.
And that quote to me just sums exactly why Postecoglou is the perfect manager for Spurs, because he just gets it. It just makes total sense. it always just shows you that he's going to be here for like when it's like Conte. Make your fucking mind up when he said that getting in the Champions League is like winning a trophy for Spurs, and then the next year sort of throwing his toys out the pram and saying that I wasn't in a position to compete and all this kind of stuff. Just Postecoglou just comes in. He's like that dad, like you said earlier. He's the stepdad, the nice one that comes in, just sorts all the rifts in the family. He's there, just like doing a barbecue every now and then. He's just like he's just class. Like he just fucking gets it. Like it's just that quote. Oh yeah, it's just perfect. Just nailed it, spot on.
It's setting the foundations for a successful team. This is a project. He's here for 4 years or probably more, and I just think if you got your head on straight, if you're a young player, looking at what he's saying, you're thinking, you know what, that's a place to thrive in, playing great football. 100%. There's not pressure on us, and that's a journey. And when I reach my peak, this team will be at its peak, and it will be so good. It's just setting that foundation, just being like, you know what, it's our first season, mate. Like,
the pressure comes when we're ready. That's the thing. The pressure comes when we're ready for it. Like in 2 years' time, like you said, these players, the ceiling for some of these players at Spurs is so high. And if we get to where we want to be over the next couple of years, whether that's just genuinely back competing for titles and cups and being in the Champions League and making sure we go deep in it like we have done and all this kind of stuff, that's when the pressure comes. That's when it comes. And then if nothing comes of it, then you can start to ask questions. I completely get that. But now the pressure's not now. The pressure is in a couple of years' time when we are where we want to be. And we all know we're building towards that.
Yeah. And as a club as well, with the stuff going on with setting that foundation with recruitment and stuff like that, Daniel Levy has definitely had sort of a redemption arc over the last year. Since all that Levy out stuff at the end of last season, it was really, really hostile. He was starting to redeem himself, and I don't know what he's just released a statement. Well, Tottenham have just released a statement. They'll be raising ticket prices by 6%. It's so unfortunate because it just ruins all that sort of credit in the bank that Levy was getting in the last 9 months. What's your thoughts on that, mate?
I think that's exactly it. He's literally just like built this amazing sort of sandcastle and then just come and kicked it back over again. Like, that's what it feels like. It's just so tone deaf in kind of the current financial climate for one thing. And I think when he says in the statement that, you know, football clubs aren't immune to these rising costs, I get that. But football clubs are also prepared to lose a hell of a lot of money on players that they sign for huge wages and huge transfer fees, like Ndombele. But we're able to forego that money and not look to get it back. But and it's the fans that always end up paying for it, and they're exploiting the loyalty that has been shown by a set of fans who feel rejuvenated this season. They've kind of capitalised on that good feeling around the club, and also it's hurting the pockets of the people that have supported the club for the longest time as well, which hurts the most. But also, like, and I really don't want to make it sound like I'm saying being insensitive to that senior, to the culling or the reducing in the discount of senior fans, because it is an absolute disgrace. Like, it's just unnecessary. But also it affects fans who are just that lifeblood of the club now, the younger fans who do go home and away, and, you know, just because they're younger and it's apparent they might have more disposable income, which is just nonsense considering how expensive things are for young people. Like, my season ticket's gone up to £1,600 next season. It's just like, and then if you want to pay that off monthly to spread the cost, they're adding another 6.7% on top of that. So it affects the lifeblood of the fans that go and, you know, spending money in the bars and going home and away. And I'm not saying it's not older fans that do that. I'm not saying that for a second, but it's just hurting everyone. And I just think that the thing that hurts about the concession prices is just the fact that these fans have been there the longest and they've shown loyalty through thick and thin, mainly thin over the last sort of like 20 years. And it just feels so incredibly unnecessary. And it just feels like they're kind of pricing those sort of people out of the game. And I think the problem is that they'll always win in the end because there's always going to be someone to take the ticket. Because of what Tottenham are now, like, someone will sit in that seat. Someone will, whether you sell it or whatever you do, like, someone will be sat in that seat come Saturday 3:00. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I think there's been a lot of anger placed at tourist fans' way, or not tourist fans, but Korean fans specifically, which I feel is completely misplaced, and actually people are just using them as a bit of a scapegoat. But they are a proof in themselves that there will always be someone that's willing to pay the money. Just an example, but because of the fact that football is it's becoming a tourist thing, it's becoming a tourist game. whether it's fan, and I don't have a problem with the Korean fans at all, because actually, like, a lot of them come and support the club more than some of the people that have been going for 20, 30 years do anyway, and get behind the team. That's not everyone. That's just a small kind of just an example, but it feels incredibly tone deaf. It's capitalising on loyalty, and it's capitalising on the feel good factor around the club that's been generated since Postecoglou's come in, and also because of how public and transparent football clubs are with their finances these days. We all know how much money you make. Spurs make close to £5 million every home game.
Yeah.
It's just a joke, and and I think, me and you, we were just talking about Postecoglou's quotes around the Champions League. We're quite realistic football fans, right? We know that we ain't gonna win the Premier League unless Guardiola goes, or like we get lucky, or all this kind of stuff. We know that. I don't expect that from Tottenham, but if you're going to start raising season ticket prices by 6%. I'd start to expect some fucking serious moves in the transfer window and stuff like that, because I want to see what are we paying for.
Yeah.
Like, I saw a thing as well, sorry to go on a bit of a rant, but Liverpool, I saw a tweet, and I tweeted it out this morning. This was Liverpool's prices from last season, and obviously you'd imagine they'll be inflated slightly, but even if their prices go up 6%, they're not touching us. Like, it's nowhere near. Liverpool, the most expensive adult season ticket at Anfield for Liverpool, who have won the Champions League and won the Premier League in the last 5 years, is only £30 more expensive than the cheapest adult season ticket at Spurs next season. We're taking the piss out. We've been taking the piss out of. I know in London, like, there is that kind of higher demand because of the tourism. Fulham are putting up their prices. Arsenal have done exactly the same thing as Tottenham with getting rid of the concession prices, or phasing them out and phasing the discount out. But Liverpool are arguably the most successful team that England has ever seen.
Yeah.
And they've got one of the cheapest season tickets. Like I said, the fact that their most expensive adult season ticket is only 30 quid more expensive than our cheapest one is mental.
It feeds into the atmosphere as well, because I think the more and more this happens, because also they've exploited a loophole. They'll probably keep doing it. They'll probably find a way of just keep doing it, keep rising it by the little percentages. But football becomes more of an event. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a day out for people, like the one day out they get watching Spurs. And I just feel like it's leading to a toxicity within the ground in two ways. One, the scapegoating. There's going to be conflict between fans, where people are going to scapegoat people that they know have made that big trip to come down to watch Spurs.
100%.
And people, and there's going to be that conflict, that divide in the fan base within the stadium, which could get ugly, I think. And also put so much pressure on the Spurs team. We were saying how this project, there's no pressure on the Spurs team, which is so, like, beautiful to see. But with us paying the most out of any Premier League club, there's so much pressure to perform, to get that silverware, that added pressure that we don't need. And also, football's about the fans, obviously, but there's not enough football people
making those decisions.
Yeah. They're all businessmen, and we're, at the end of the day, we're all clients, and we're all just putting that money into the back of their pockets, and they'll just keep exploiting that. Also, it's such a shame, because football's about relationships. It's about memories. The memories you make. Like, for me and my dad, we can bond over Spurs forever. He got me into Tottenham. He would take me to games all the time, and it was the best memories I ever had. And we can't really go anymore because it's so expensive. We don't go to that many games, and it's a shame. But that, obviously, I'm talking from my own personal experiences. That's going to be for everyone. Think about how much it costs just to travel to the Spurs games and then to be there every week. People can't afford that anymore. So you're depriving these fans of this emotional connection with the club, and for future generations, you're depriving it the memories that they could gain from going to a Spurs game, just because we can't fucking afford it anymore. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And I think that it kind of stings even more, like I said, about, we're built as this self-sustainable football club, and the fact that our non-football events have gone up from 16 to 30 for next season, and the money that's coming in from that. And that doesn't bother me at all. Like, people can take the piss out as much as they want about, the go-karting track, and you got Beyonce playing at your stadium. It's brilliant, because that's, and like you said, in terms of Tottenham's ability to compete over the next few years, we are when you look at what's happening with Chelsea, Aston Villa, Leicester coming up facing huge problems with financial fair play, Everton, Nottingham Forest, Spurs have, touch wood, aren't even anywhere remotely near that conversation in terms of spending power because of what we're able to do now, because of how self-sustainable we've been, and that is the way. They were talking about it on the overlap fan debate. Gary Neville was sort of talking about it, obviously as an owner of Salford, and he was sort of saying the way that Tottenham have built the model is exactly the way that modern football clubs should be doing it. That's because
I
of
saw that.
obviously it's not just a way of now, like, you know, Newcastle are frustrated because they've got all this money but they're not able to spend it because they have to be compliant with the rules. Tottenham haven't got that problem because it's all generative, it's all regenerative, and that's what hurts the most about the price increase, because it's like, we don't need to do this.
No.
You really don't need to do this. I know football clubs are not immune to a financial crisis, and we're going into a recession. It's going to hurt big businesses, but it hurts as much as banks and football clubs and all these big companies will come out and say it hurts them. It's always going to hurt the working person even more. And football is a working person's game. You know, started as a working man's game back ever when. It's now a game for everyone to be involved in. Men, women, whoever, like, to come and watch this, spend their money and support this football club. And I think Spurs have, what's a shame is that Spurs have done so well to kind of make it feel like that over the last few years. But it's just, this is such a kick in the teeth.
Yeah.
It's just a piss take. It's just, it is just a complete piss take, and it's just throwing back in your face the loyalty that you've shown since however long you've been supporting Spurs. And the emotional connection is massively important, because, you know, if you were, say, for example, you're in a big group of people that go to Spurs, like whether it's your family or whether it's your mates that you've known from school or you've built through going to Spurs, you could and you'll sit together. Next season, one of you might not be able to go, and it doesn't feel the same. You might have conversations about, one of your mates might turn around and say to you, you know what, mate, I actually genuinely don't think I can afford this. And I'm looking at it thinking, I'm trying to think out, like, I've got 2 months to renew it, but like, I will do it, and I will find a way to make it work, because Spurs is so important to me. And I think that's the problem, is that, going back to exploiting the loyalty, is that if you surveyed most of the people that are unhappy with this, or everyone that's unhappy with this, because no one's going to be happy about the money going up. It's just a fact. Like, you'd find a very high percentage of fans that will go, yeah, but I'm still going to renew. And that's part of the problem. I'm not saying they shouldn't, and I'm going to, because I'm part of it. They're not the problem. But the problem is that the fact that the club know that is the case, that's a problem. Yeah. It's a real problem. But it's just a real shame. Like you said, you could be sitting in your group of mates at the game next year, turn around, and one of them's not there because they can't afford it. It's just not good enough.
Yeah, it's just taking advantage of our love and our for the club and our emotional connection to it. And like you say, it's just a fucking piss take. Yeah, it's such a shame, because we're in such a positive period at the moment, feeling like we're going somewhere, and who knows how many times they're going to keep doing this, because they know that they can get away with it in the long run. Let's move on, mate. Let's move on to the Q&As. So thanks for everyone getting in their questions in over TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. The first question is from Cal Presswood on Insta. And he says, should we be looking for a striker in the summer, or do we keep Richie?
I think we should be looking at the best players available in all positions that we think can improve the team. But I don't think it should be a priority. I think you've got a depth. You've got a really good blend of Sonny and Richie there. I think it's one of those questions for more when Sonny looks as if he could potentially be not on the way out, but like coming to the end of his peak at Spurs. I think it's more of a conversation for them. I think we've spoken so much about the fact that I think a wide player is incredibly important for Spurs to really kick on. We've got pound for pound the best striker in the league in Son. Like, I don't think that's a debate. Like, obviously, I'm not saying he's the best striker, but pound for pound, like, in terms of the XG over performance, the money that we paid for him all those years ago, the consistency, he is pound for pound the best finisher and striker in the league.
Yeah.
So I think for now, like, I don't think it should be a huge priority, and I would personally keep Richarlison next year.
I completely agree. I think, Richarlison's such a confidence player. So if you're bringing in someone, you're going to have to sell Richarlison. Because we were talking about the cohesion within the dressing room. He'll kick up a fuss if he's not playing any games. We bring in this big signing. And I just think it's money that we should be focusing on other positions. Like we were saying with the wingers, we've talked about this so many times. But I think there's definitely players that would add a different dynamic to Son, that would do their job to a better level than Richarlison. Definitely. I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head, Gyökeres.
That's the name in my head. I just thought of the goal that he scored against. That he scored against Benfica a couple of weeks ago. Fucking hell,
so good. So
superb.
Good. And then obviously there's players in the Premier League. We talked about Watkins. We talked about. Actually, I'm not talking about Tony. But like, there's so many players that I could name that cost a lot of money that would definitely do better job than Richie, but you got a full of confidence for Charlison. Just he's doing what we've always wanted him to do at Spurs. He's just got into his rhythm. I think it would be silly right now, maybe in the future, maybe next season, maybe next summer is where we prioritise that. But for right now, if we brought in a striker, I think it would just cause a bit of a rift. And I feel like Richarlison and Son balance each other out so well with what they bring, with the different dynamics that they bring to the attack. Obviously, Richarlison for lower blocks, for his movement in the box, and then Son when the game's stretched and he can get in behind the defence. And also we've got Valise. I mean, Valise, we talked about him before, but again, young player, he adds a different element up top, bit more of a target man, bit more of a nuisance. And I think if we sign a player for loads of money, it would be a bit, I think it would be a bit out of character because I don't think we need it too much. And also, Postecoglou said about replacing Kane, you can't replace Kane. You've got to add players around the pitch that will contribute to the amount of goals that Kane was scoring on his own. I think a winger's the way to go, I think, to be honest.
100%.
Lewis Barden 877 on TikTok says
from pitch side.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Lewis.
He says top 3 youngsters that are not in the first team. Who do you think has the highest ceiling? Go on, this is your area more than me. I think I've heard you in the lab.
Well, yeah, on that podcast as well, I remember looking back at that. Flav labelled me as a youth football expert, which I think is very generous. Very generous. Like, watch most Spurs under-21s games when I can. Like, expert is far from it. There's far more people that you should go and listen to other than me, with the extra inch being one of them, and Windy for sure.
Yeah.
His quality. But I think if I had to pick, I think 3 is difficult because there's a lot of talent. Like, to name check a few, like obviously Mikey Moore, Iago Santiago, Will Lankshire's really sort of coming of age a little bit as a striker in that team, but I still think there's a long way to go for him. A lot of parts of his game to refine. Looks a little bit clunky, but that will come with age. Like, think of what Kane was like, like that will come for him. Sunset Bell, Tyrese Hall as well, really exciting young midfielder. But I think in terms of like the one that you really think is going to make an impact on the first team and who has the highest ceiling, I think just for his all-round game, is Jamie Donnelly. Like, just a superb player. Like, makes it look so easy. I remember going to watch one of the under-21 games at Stevenage at the start of the season when we beat Chelsea. The under-21s only lost their first game of the season last week. They've been on this incredible run. I think they lost at home to Everton. Been on this amazing run, and Donnelly has been crucial to that. I think he's got something like 17 assists and 10 goals in 20-odd games. It's just a joke. Like, he's such a clever playmaker, drops deeper. He likes to do Harry Kane, like, people talk about Kane, that he's become this kind of like playmaking, Teddy Sheringham-esque sort of number 10 at Spurs in the last few years and at Bayern as well now, and for England as well. But that's sort of how Kane started as well, and then sort of got moulded into that striker as he broke through into the first team, and as he got that little bit older in his development, he was used as a striker a lot on his loan spells. But Kane always liked to play that sort of link-up stuff that Donnelly does as well, and I think Donnelly is maybe a little bit more natural at it. He's just a super player to watch. Spurs beat, I think it was Fleetwood a couple of weeks ago in the under-21 Premier League Cup.
Yeah.
It might not be Fleetwood. It might have been someone else.
The goal
it was unbelievable. Yeah. And Donnelly had 4 assists in that game. Obviously, Lancashire got a hat-trick. But go and watch it if you haven't seen it already. I'm sure most Spurs fans have. But there's a reverse pass that Donnelly plays for the last goal for, I think it was Santiago, who goes around the keeper and just rolls it in on the line. It's just exquisite. And I think I'd love to see, obviously we've got Alfie Devine is someone I'm super excited about out on loan as well. He's sort of heading that development, and I think Devine could be a massive player for Spurs as well. And obviously you've got Phillips, who's not an academy product, but has had a really good spell so far at Plymouth as alongside Devine. But I just think Donnelly, I just can see that. I can see him in the first team being that guy for years to come. So I'm going to go with Donnelly if I had to pick one.
Yeah, the list goes on and on and on because you got like Dorrington in there, Dane Scarlett, and Leo
people
Black.
Forget about Scarlett. Like, people forget about Scarlett, man.
Yeah,
like he in that game. Like, I think it was Fleetwood. I don't want to get it wrong, but it was when Spurs beat someone 6-0 a couple of weeks ago. He's I can't remember. I think he might have scored, but he also played. It was Fleetwood, yeah. He played in sort of a bit of a different role, almost behind Lancashire in this sort of number 10, drifting off into these channels, and just his link-up play and stuff, which he did look really sharp, Scarlett. Obviously struggled a lot at Ipswich But I think he was unlucky at Ipswich because I don't think they expected to be where they are now.
Yeah,
And it almost
exactly.
like he went into a team that was just clicking and just didn't really get a look
Yeah,
in. But
exactly.
I'm excited for Scarlett, but I just think Donnelly is the one. I do
Well,
think he is the one.
I remember on Scarlet quickly. I remember Paul O'Keefe was saying that Ange prefers him over Valise at the
For
moment,
Liz, yeah.
and I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
whether that's just because the dynamic he has of getting him behind his movement's excellent, his finishing's excellent. I don't know whether it's that, but again, I'm not you go to if you want to listen to Tottenham youth players. I'm sort of just watching it from afar, seeing the development, and I'm excited because the list goes on and on and on with the players we're producing out of nowhere as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like it always happens with these kind of things in the academy. Like you quite often have a barren few years with one player that's really sort of standing out, and then all of a sudden this crop comes through. Like you think of the class of '92 at United and all that sort of stuff. I'm not for a second saying the football landscape is incredibly different now. Like that just won't happen again, probably.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
Nah.
that they're as good as that lot, but they are. You like you said, it's all sort of coming at once for Spurs. But there's some make sure, like if you can, like if people are out there, make sure you kind of try and keep up with these players because they're just before you know it, they'll be in the first team at Spurs or somewhere else. So we've got a really good, exciting crop of players coming along.
Yeah, future's bright. I think we'll leave it there for today. It was a long episode actually.
Yeah, it was cathartic. I enjoyed it. It was good to get some of that stuff out.
And I'm buzzing for the game over the weekend. What's your score predictions?
I'm gonna say 3-2 to Spurs. I think it'll be a bit like the game we had against them a few years ago where Sonny scored that last minute winner. Could see something similar happening. Head maybe says a draw, like maybe 1-1, 2-1, but I think I'll go with a 3-2 victory for Spurs. I think it'll be goals.
Yeah, draw's boring. You gotta go for the Spurs win. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think the fact that Villa played over literally yesterday, such a benefit to us.
They rested players, but there was still a fair few out there.
Yeah. So I mean, their fans are going to be rocking. We need to be at our A game, but I can see either a 2-1 Spurs or a freakish game where we win like 4-2.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like we smash a couple of goals in, and everyone's like, "Fucking hell!" Like, oh my god,
these lot are good. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like they will score. They're definitely scoring. I feel like like you say, I reckon they might.
Yeah,
score
they're too
like
good not to.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it'll be a great game. What Super Sunday?
Yeah.
I mean, if we lose, I probably won't watch the. I will, obviously. I'm going to bed.
You know what's going to happen? We're going to lose, and then City and Liverpool play out this really boring draw, and then Arsenal will go top. It's just
the worst weekend possible.
Yeah, it's going to be one of them weekends. But no, mate, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to getting out there.
Legend. Make sure you follow Daring and Doing on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, YouTube, Apple. Coming to Apple. Yeah.
Also on Spotify, if you could leave a rating, that'd be massively helpful.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And as well, this was something I actually found out the other day from listening to another pod, our good friend Mr. Flav, that if you go onto Spotify and click on the podcast and click the little settings button, you'll be able to set the podcast for automatic download, so then that you won't ever miss an episode. It'll just be there. So you can do that as well if you like. Yeah, I can't tell you what to do, but go and feel free.
I'm telling you to do it.
Yeah, make sure you fucking do it.
Yeah. Legend, mate. And what's your socials? Give that a little shout out.
Ben Talks Football on TikTok. There's a lot to talk about ahead of this weekend's game, so you'll probably see my face quite a bit. Hopefully, anyway, if the algorithm does its job. You can find me on there. And then just Ben Bowman on Twitter. Just rambling about Spurs as usual, and just... Yeah, and you might hear me on some other podcasts and stuff. I did the Hotspur Way podcast last night. Shout out to them.
Did you?
That was fun. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. That was a funny evening. So go and have a listen to that as well if you like, if you want to hear more of my voice. But yeah, man, looking forward to Sunday.
Quality, mate. Me too. We'll see you all soon with the match review. Hopefully we've got 3 points by then. And up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.